Thank you for auditing Professor Skye's Record Review, the always positive new music review show hosted by a French professor who for the second time in his life has listened to the music of Hayley Williams and will be reviewing the album Flowers for Vases, Descansos. Or Flowers for Vases. I don't know how pretentiously she pronounces it. Now, before I get into the review, I am going to get into a review of this album, but something interesting happened this week. You see, I am sort of doing this as part two of a two-part series of albums that I believe are very linked thematically and musically. I believe these albums are linked despite the fact that I believe there to be presumably no artistic transmission whatsoever, which is to say I assume both of these artists are completely ignorant of each other. One is the New Zealand-born Australian artist that I reviewed on Sunday, Sarah Mary Chadwick, and then this is the American-born, American-working Hayley Williams and her album. One is kind of super dark indie musician, very, very bleak and sparse music. And then the other is a lot more of a glossy musician, a lot more power pop, pop punk known Hayley Williams. The reason I want to compare these is not just because they are two albums made by women completely by themselves that all center around basically the same theme of losing love. It's because it's interesting to see these things happening at the same time. You see, the Super Bowl happened on Sunday, the American football game, and in the halftime show, there was The Weeknd. Now, I don't talk about The Weeknd because I don't like thinking about cocaine. It just bums me out. But I respect The Weeknd, and I know he's a good artist. And on my Facebook, a lot of what I call ex-boomers came out complaining about The Weeknd. Ex-boomers, what I call people who are my age but who act like boomers. I literally read comments like, "Why isn't Greta Van Fleet playing this halftime show?" I thought it was a joke. I thought this person was joking, that they were jokingly sounding so old and out of touch, but they weren't. Another one said, "This should be the Foo Fighters." You know, when the Foo Fighters album came out, and I'm not going to be reviewing it, I don't like it enough. And I'm thinking about like all the people who are my age who are certain that music has gone down the drains and that there's nothing creative, and it's all just bleeps and bloops on computers, or it's all just poppy garbage. The thing is this. The vitality of art depends directly. There's a direct correlation between how much you are paying attention and how vital art is. If I weren't paying attention, I would be right there with the rest of my ex-boomer friends, saying, "Why isn't Radiohead's the only band that's left doing any good music?" Right? Like, I would just be stuck there. But being able to see these two albums, which are bizarrely linked, I'm able to see this vitality, this growth that comes from this period of time, this weird linkage between two very different artists, and I'm able to see what's happening in art now. These things are always happening. There's never been a time since the 60s, I think, where art has realistically actually taken a dip in creativity or creation. We just need to pay attention. So I want to take a little bit more time. If you haven't seen my video on Sarah Mary Chadwick, I suggest you listen to it. Or even better, listen to her album that just came out, Me and Ennui Are Friends, Baby. And I think it's fun to listen to these albums back to back as I have. I can't test you, so I can't really give you homework, but I suggest it as an experiment. They are both very stirring personal explorations by women completely by themselves, playing every single note you hear on the album. They are both completely obsessed by losing a lover. Like, it seems as though every song is about maybe the same guy, and they just cannot move on from the ex. At the edges of both albums, we have these themes of women in their 30s coming to terms with the end of their youth. And this isn't boring, "Oh, my beauty," more like, how does adulthood come on? How do we like transition to a more mature adult relationship with our own emotions, okay? Both of them randomly have, in my favorite songs, references to their ex-lovers lighting them a cigarette. An odd thing. People don't sing about cigarettes very much these days. Both albums are connected to albums that each artist respectively released in the last calendar year that were much more full and were a lot more produced. In Chadwick's case, she had a full band as opposed to just being alone at the piano. And in Hayley Williams' case, her last album was like a full pop explosion, a very well glossy produced thing. Interestingly, and this is where the similarities and differences become clear, we have the two covers of these albums. Okay? I'm having trouble figuring out how to show you off the screen, but I think you can see there. Okay? So both of them feature the stars of the album, the women who are making all the music, in a disembodied way or a headed way, right? You don't see their faces in either case. Both of them are vaguely erotic. Both of them are vaguely unsettling, right? We have Sarah Mary Chadwick's crotch there, and then we have Hayley Williams like naked in a bath with a laser show going on. I don't know what that red stuff is. But in the differences between these, we see the deep divide, and why I think these are so fascinating to listen to next to each other. These albums are so similar, yet very different, and a lot of different can be seen in this. Chadwick's album is an album of abject horror and terror and absolute bleakness and suicide and darkness and hatred of parents and all this stuff. It's got the immediacy, but it's so raw. Whereas here, we have a lot more of it's kind of a raw image, but it's comfortable. Yeah, she's naked, but she's wearing some clothes, so it's not too risque. She's taking a bath or she's in some water. There's sort of a warmth to that we don't have here. So that's my little prelude. Just a little incidental prelude of how I'm listening to music. And part of what I want to do is share with you what I do. Because I listen to every album that comes out every week. Sometimes I listen to only 30 seconds. Sometimes I listen to the whole thing. I'm trying to figure out what I want to review. And it's really, to me, a beautiful moment that both these albums can come out and force us to contemplate the nature of losing love. Now, I will say that I think I've been rewarded by my ignorance of Hayley Williams. The fact that I've never heard a Paramore song, or the fact that I've heard them, but I don't know which song is Paramore and which song is Evanescence. Ooh, I am pissing some people off. I'm just being honest, okay? I am an ex-boomer, after all. Means that I get to treat her music as though she was a nobody, just somebody making music. I don't have any of her back catalog stuck in my head. I have the vague memory of seeing t-shirts at Hot Topic while my daughter was buying t-shirts for My Chemical Romance. I have a vague idea of where they fit in terms of pop music and emo music in the past 20 years. But beyond that, all I know is Petals for Armor and Flowers for Vases. Vases? Vases. Flowers for Vases. And what's nice is that I get to see the artistry here. They just go perfectly together. These two albums really fit very nicely. What's cool is that they have a very different approach to production, and even lyrically very different. But as I will get into, they really fit nicely together. The most remarkable thing about this album, Flowers for Vases, is that she plays all the instruments on the album. Now listen, there have been a lot of albums where every note is played by one person. Okay, just Paul McCartney released an album like that last month, right? I don't think, I've been really searching my mind, has there ever been a front man or front woman who's released an album like this? Of course, Prince did it, right? Of course, there's been hundreds of people who have done this trick. But to be the front man or the front woman, what's the female version of front man, by the way? I've been thinking about that, right? It's a very specific thing. A lead singer who is just the lead singer. Just that's what they're known for. Mick Jagger, Steven Tyler, okay? People like that. Morrissey. They've had solo works before, but playing everything? This is a really cool oddity, if you ask me, because front women and front men are not expected to have musical knowledge, are not expected to know how to play multiple instruments. If they can pull off one instrument, they're usually applauded by the press as the whole fleet of studio musicians are there behind them making sure to cover up. This is a great piece of art, if nothing else, than just as a kind of, hey, look at this. I think Steven Tyler, by the way, could do this from Aerosmith. I think if he did, it would be good. Because he hasn't made good music for 20 years now. It would be interesting to see if he could do that. But after listening to this album by Hayley Williams, I revisited her last one, and I found that I liked it a lot more. I like Petals for Armor more because when you hear a solo album from a lead singer, from a front person, I'll land on that, from a front person, from the face of a band, you just suspect that they're just being directed and guided and pushed in and the question of authenticity and actual creativity is, at least for me, put into question. Now, Hayley Williams has a lot of very, very dedicated fans, and I appreciate that. And they're probably the people who are watching this video right now. And so they're going, Skye, how did you not know that she's a genius and she knows everything? Listen, you're clouded, and I don't blame you. Your opinion is clouded by your love of the musician. It is not a reasonable thing to assume that a solo act is primarily responsible for what they put out if they seem so packaged, and if it seems as though it fits the narrative of, hey, I'm making a solo album, and the producer and the studio musicians are going to back me up. Knowing that she has this kind of songwriting talent, this kind of musical talent, completely recontextualizes that album in a very good way. Maybe I'm just being snobby. I thought about this a lot. Am I just being sexist? But I realized I'm not being sexist. I just have a thing against lead singers. I have a thing against lead people, because I just get the sense that they're this vaunted position in life, and they get all the attention and all the love, and all the actual artists are suffering behind. But that's not the case here. This is also a great COVID album. There have been so many great COVID albums. COVID has been terrible for musicians. I'm not sure if it's been terrible for music, because it's been forcing all of these interesting solo experiments, all of these artists being stuck without the trappings of touring, without the trappings of stardom, and just making music. We discover on this that she's a good guitar player, competent bass player, very good piano player, knows how to use her voice, knows how to produce her voice. The voice rules over everything, and more importantly, she's just a great songwriter, and she shows that off in this whole album. Who knows if she would have had the opportunity to do this if she could have toured with Pedals for Armor, right? You, Hayley Williams superfan, right? You would have bought all the tickets to all the shows within 200 miles, and you would have gone, and you would have bought the t-shirts and the posters and everything, and she would have made $50 million, right? $100 million off of her tour. Who knows? I don't know how much money goes in here. Instead, she's stuck, and she has to release an album that's going to make a lot less money, but really be something that's probably more meaningful for you, the Hayley Williams fan, than even seeing her in person. Because you get another album, another great piece of music. We're starting to get turnaround times for albums that are like back in the 60s when artists would release like 2 albums a year. We're getting back to that. The feeling on this album is late night recording. You feel like she's in her studio, like it's at night or in the morning. It's like half whispered. It's kind of indie folk pop, kind of country, kind of soulful. It's sort of a mix between like country and soft rock. And that sounds like a dig, right? Like that sounds like an insult, because I don't particularly care for soft rock and I don't care for a lot of modern country. But I think it fits in with this general atmosphere that she's able to achieve, of this kind of nice intimacy. I will say that in revisiting Pedals for Armor, I realized I like Pedals for Armor a lot more than I thought I did. I reviewed it, and then I listened to it maybe once after that. Re-listening to it now, I realize if I see it at the Record Archive in Rochester, New York, my favorite record store, not sponsored, I just like them that much, I'll probably buy it. I'll probably buy the album, because it turns out I actually really like Hayley Williams, and this album helped to cement that. This sort of country and soulful sound, I do also think the comparisons are going to be made, and they should be made, between her and Taylor Swift. I don't know if Swifties hate Hayley's. I don't know if the fan groups hate each other. I imagine they might. But this concept of making a very heartfelt, pared-down album in the time of COVID by somebody who's very famous for being a front person and pretty and interesting and maybe not taken as seriously as they should be. I think in both cases, these artists who probably shouldn't have to defend their seriousness end up making these great albums that defend their seriousness. I sort of wonder, too, if this isn't not only a reaction to COVID, but a reaction to the digital age, just where everything is blips and bloops, like my ex-boomer friends on Facebook say. This is the same reason why record players and pinball machines are doing so well right now, because people like tactile things, and this feels like a very tactile album. The theme of the album, there's just one theme. I can't get over my breakup. I can't. Whoever it was I broke up with, I'm going to write every single song about this person. Or maybe persons. I spent a little bit of time, too much time, a little bit of time, definitely too much time, in the comments section of Lyric Genius when I was researching the album. and it's filled with Hayley fans who are all talking about who are these songs about. And they keep on saying, is it about Chad or Taylor? Now, I don't know if Chad and Taylor actually exist. Is this like making fun of like people's names? Because like Chad and Taylor are like the most like stereotypical like goofy white names. I don't know if Chad and Taylor are real people. I don't know if Hayley Williams is. I assume that she was with one of them and recently got divorced or broke up, because this album just is a complete disaster after a breakup album. But it's kind of fun to be in my position to not know who these people are. And it's fun too because the last album I didn't feel was about this. The last album felt a lot more varied in its thematics. This one has one tone, this kind of country, soft rock tone, and one message. I miss you, I want you back, I don't want you back. Right? Whereas Petals for Armor was just all over the place and very varied, which matches together with this, which makes this whole thing into one interesting project. I guess her flower project. Okay, so I picked one song as an example. I'm going to put a link to it up there. I want you to have a listen to it. It's called HYD. It's my personal favorite track on the album, and it's the track I'm going to use to explain as an example of what to listen to. It starts off by showing the seams, which is what she likes to do. She starts singing, and then it's funny because she starts singing when the air is quiet, and then an airplane flies overhead. And she says, "Are you effing kidding me?" And this is a very intentional thing. She's trying to show the brushstrokes. Okay, so in art history, in the 19th century, artists started to intentionally show the brushstrokes so you could see the passion, so you could see their hand in their creation. That's very much what she's trying to do here. But what she's doing is doing it in the service of this song, which is a very sweet song, just voice and a guitar. And as a songwriter, I think she really has something here. This exhibits, I think, the best part of her songwriting, which reminds me of, you probably aren't expecting this, or I don't think you are, reminds me of Willie Nelson. Not in the way that she sounds, but Willie Nelson has this ability to write country songs that are very, very clever and very, very personal at the same time. So you hear them and you go, oh, that was a neat trick. You know, Hello Walls is a great example. I mean, just what a clever, clever, clever song Hello Walls is. But what a heartbreaking song Hello Walls is. HYD has that feeling with this amazing simple chorus. I wonder how you doing now. Just this simple line, just very simple, but it's very, very important. I wonder how you're doing. You know, how you doing is like an impersonal statement that we say to anybody all the time, but it masquerades as a personal statement, right? Like if you ask someone how you're doing and you actually answer them, they get pissed, right? They just want you to go, good, thanks. So in asking, I wonder how you doing, is a general question to her lover. How are you doing? Are you okay? And then tagging it with how you doing now makes it clear in the context of the rest of the song and the rest of the album, now after the breakup. This very simple play of words. It's hardly even a play of words. It's a play of word. One little word makes this chorus just astounding and enlarges it but makes this little dumb phrase into something meaningful. Which on the second chorus, she changes to, I wonder how you view me now. It's just great. It's very deep, very good songwriting, very meaningful and very clever. This song is also a good example of how she develops her songs throughout this album. I mean, it's a very, it's always a danger. And the same problem happened with Sarah Mary Chadwick, or the same issue happened, where how do you have just one person and have the album have some kind of dynamism to it, where you don't get bored of it? And the way that she does it mostly is by having very subtle production, where she's able to do some nice dynamics that you might not that aren't very flashy. So as an example, after the chorus, which is this kind of nice poppy chorus, along with the great words, the second verse has this delicate development. She uses her own voice to back herself. She adds some piano moments. She builds, but she doesn't quite shock. And then in hindsight, she uses her own self as a backup vocalist not very often. She does it sparingly, which is pretty impressive because her voice is so strong and it's such an effective technique. It's pretty nice to see the hesitance that she does to use it. So there's my example of the best track. of the album and what makes this album interesting and what makes her songwriting particularly special. I'll now go through the rest of the album in case you're interested to hear what I think. First track is called First Thing to Go, was the sound of his voice. That's the beginning. Another Willie Nelson-ish style of First Thing to Go was the sound of his voice. It's clever, it's true, and it's painful. Like trying to remember the sound of his voice, that's the thing that goes. She creates interesting harmonies in this, kind of an odd guitar line as a bass line, kind of, and just beautiful lyrics. I'm scared to lose what's left of you. Just this pain of memory. Next track is called My Limb, which I don't think fits on this album. It's kind of funky and it's got a sparse bass. Sort of like it feels like it's connected to Petals for Armor. I mean, thematically it's about like cut off my arm and it's a tourniquet and all that stuff. Shy little rabbit teething on a shotgun, but it has this sort of 80s throwback feel, which I liked quite a bit on Petals for Armor, but I don't think it quite works as well on this album. I don't know. Next track is called Asystole, which apparently is the cardiac flatline, like when you're watching a TV show. Beep, beep, beep. Come on, damn it. Beep, clear, right? Well, you're supposed to say clear before. We have a tourniquet in the last one, Asystole here. It seems as though she might be watching some ER or something. But it's a very nicely produced song, very guitar based with gentle other elements added in, like some synth elements at the end of the chorus, and just repeating this line, Asystole. And it's nice because this kind of hopeless theme of redlining ends with the lines of revive your love in me or revive your life in me. I forget what the lyrics actually are, but they center on the word revive, and there's an outro in the song which has a little bit of a lift. So it might indicate that, clear, beep, beep. There might be a little rise in beep. Maybe she's with Cody or Taylor. Is it Cody? Who's Taylor? Chad. Maybe she's back with Chad. Who knows? Maybe they never even broke up. I don't know. It's really fun, by the way, listening to musicians whose personal lives are very important to the people who follow them without following their personal lives. That's part of what makes reviewing Taylor Swift so fun. It's like, as far as I know, she's still with Jack Mayer, right? John Mayer? I don't even know what that guy's name is. It's kind of fun to have that distance and take them just seriously as artists and not as celebrities. The track Trigger is another great track, one of my favorites. I almost made this my stamp of the album. She does these nice things where it's kind of a labored guitar line, like it sounds like she's having trouble playing it. I don't think she actually is, but she's playing it in that way. These ascending voice, beautiful lyrics, very simple guitar, just simple production with two guitars and a voice, kind of whispering, haunting piano in the back. All I ever had to say about love is a sad song. I get off on telling everybody what went wrong. It makes me feel like the pain had purpose, keeps me believing that maybe it's worth it. A great song about love and loss. Again, you could take out these lyrics and put them in the Sarah Mary Chadwick album and not be able to tell the difference. Please put in the comments, by the way, if you're going to do the thing that I said of listening to these albums back to back. I'm just curious because I wish everybody would do it because it's so cool. These two albums came out at the same time and they're so different and yet so similar in a lot of ways. Over Those Hills is another song thinking about what life could be like if she was still with Taylor, let's say. Kind of fudging around the guitar, again, showing the paint strokes. It's not really a song, like there's not more than one part. One thing that I like is she talks about taking her pills in the morning and night. Some people need to take pills. Pills don't have to be 6ix9ine or Lil Pump or Lil Perp or whatever, right? Like, you don't have to be an abuser of pills to sing about pills. She needs to take pills, and so she takes them. It's actually self-care. It's nice seeing that. It's good for the pharmaceutical industry. And she sort of fantasizes about looking out her window and looking at the hills with her lover. And this feels very real. Like, I like this. Again, I don't know. I don't know if this is Willie Nelson-ish, but it's very, very clever. Because the idea that you have where she's looking at hills and then she just has to pick up a guitar and start singing and playing a song about wishing she was next to Chad or Taylor and looking out, there you go. The second verse has kind of an added voice and before kind of a song. There's not really like too much development, just kind of one part to this entire song. Although there's kind of a guitar solo. And what's nice is she's not a lead guitarist. That's very clear, right? But it's just a very simple guitar that kind of follows a melody. It leads into a da-da-da part. Next track is called Good Grief. So I'm going to take a sip of coffee from my Joe Cool mug. You know, because good grief is what Charlie Brown said, if you don't know. If you're not an ex-boomer like me. And Good Grief is great. It's a doubled voice. So anytime you hear a doubled voice on an album that's very personal, you go, Elliott Smith! I don't know. I don't know if there's an Elliott Smith influence here. You just can't help it if you hear a doubled voice and a guitar. But again, another very creative idea for a song. There's no such thing as good grief, right? Good grief is an expression that we use, and she's taking it and twisting it on its head. Then she talks about, I haven't eaten in 3 weeks. Does she have some kind of eating disorder thing here? This seems like a very specific eating disorder song. But the song gets more interesting than that. Because in the chorus, she talks about, I guess whoever it is that she's missing is a musician. I guess Chad or Taylor plays music. And she like wants to listen to someone else sing. Here's the lines. One more time, play me something I won't sing. I'll be quiet, play me something one more time, I'm listening. I am thankful this exists because it is hard to be a blowhard, okay? Trust me. I know. To be the kind of person who's always talking, always sharing their opinion, and who always has an audience. There are certain classes of human beings who get put in this position where they speak and people listen. Politicians, teachers, preachers, celebrities, okay? People who talk and people listen. And it poisons your mind. Just like if you're a salesperson, it poisons your mind and you try to sell, you can't stop trying to sell people things, okay? I've talked to salespeople and like, it poisons your mind. It poisons my mind that I am paid to be heard. And I even have this YouTube channel and you're not paying me, but you're choosing to listen to me talk about Hayley Williams for half an hour, right? Like this thing. And even attractive people in general have this as well. Just like whenever you're super attractive, I hear, like people just want to hear you talk and just say, oh yes, oh yes. So she is expressing the pain of realizing that she isn't able to listen because she's such a blowhard, because she's always trying to sing and take over the conversation and not listen. Hayley Williams wrote the definitive song about being a blowhard who's trying to fix their ways. Thank you, Hayley Williams. Like, legitimately, thank you. On behalf of all the teachers, preachers, politicians, and celebrities out there, thank you for addressing this, because our cause is not that well respected. Because when you are extroverted, or when you are the kind of person who likes to hear yourself talk and who people like to hear talk, you don't get a lot of sympathy. But it's hard to form real human connections there. Next track is called Wait On. I don't like this song. That's okay. I don't hate it. It fits into the rest of the album, but I'm just going to skip it. I got tired of the metaphors, the sky opening, the birds flying. You can come at me, Hayley Williams fans. I'm going to get to the next song, which I love. KYRH, Keep You Right Here. It's piano-led, beautiful piano, kind of vibrato and extended vocals. The piano becomes mournful, these repeated notes, with these kind of string sounds behind. Not many, like, it just feels important. And she keeps on talking about keep you right here where the line is, at my fingers, at the surface, like trying to keep somebody in her memory, trying to keep somebody there. It's like a minimalist song that is also insanely full. It's a great, very short song that just feels like it just poured out of her head and she just had to get it out there, and it's just great. Next track is called Inordinary. Kind of sad memories of childhood, of moving, I guess. There's some kind of reminds me a little bit of like some solo Morrissey work actually at the very end. These kind of nice sounds that come over at the end. Here I was reading the Genius comments, and in the Genius comments, it was all just people falling over themselves, putting in GIFs of people crying and saying like, how did you do this, Hayley? I can't stop crying. It's a beautiful song. It's even kind of a profound song in the way that it plays with the words ordinary and inordinary and repeats them so many times that you have trouble figuring out which one is which, and you start to wonder what is the meaning of ordinary in the first place. But why are you crying about this? If you're one of those Hayley fans, what makes you cry about this? Do you have to know the story of Chad and Taylor? You know, is this like a love triangle? I don't know. Maybe the song didn't do it for me because maybe the song is actually written for people who are paying attention to her life. Then HYD is next, great track, which I discussed. No Use, I Just Do. I was going to skip this one as well and say it's not very good, but I was in the bathroom back there. I was kind of getting ready for the show. I put my hair back, you know, just so it looks better on the show. I was doing that, and this song came on, and I was going to skip talking about this song, but I just heard it in the background. I'm like, this is a really beautiful little song. So I'm just going to say that. Next track is Find Me Here, more of a kind of country folk song, almost Beatles-ish in its songwriting, nice harmonizing with herself, some more great lyrics, memories we both agree are not reality. Who's we in here? Descansos is an instrumental song, and those are the things where, like, when people like get killed on the highway, people leave little markers for them. I don't know why it's called that. I don't know if this is like about the death of her love. I don't know what it is, but this little song adds to the scope of the whole album, adds to the ambition of the whole album. The little songs matter because it makes it feel like there's something else happening, and you're trying to figure out what it is. It's really quite nice, and it's right before the final track, Just a Lover, which is a really nice song, sort of about old technology and childhood, like making mix CDs. We have a lot more development going on here. There's some drums on here. I would have liked to heard more drums. It's clear she's not comfortable playing drums, but that she can play them well enough to have a great minimalist drum beat. I would love for her to just do Flowers for Vases 2 and have it all with drums, because I love naive drumming, right? Like drumming where the person who's playing isn't a drummer, they're a musician, and they're just playing enough to keep up. I think that it's a great sound, and once you get good enough at drums, you can't recreate that sound authentically. I love that sound here. Here, we have these weird aspirations with her voice, and then she uses her outside voice for the first time on the whole album. Like, she's like almost not quite yelling, but like she's using her outside voice and this cool discordant chords and drum effects, all this development. And I read somewhere in one of my articles I read about this album that she considers it a prequel to the last album. And here's where it makes sense. This track absolutely leads right up to Pedals for Armor with its development, with its drumming, with its sensibility. If you got this and then you just immediately started playing Pedals for Armor, you'd see how it works. You know, like the end of Rogue One or whatever, with Darth Vader shaking his hand at the ship, and then at the beginning of Episode 4 in Star Wars, you see that same ship. That kind of connection, it just works out just nicely. So there you go. There's my second review, my second time ever listening to Hayley Williams. I very much enjoy it. Last time I said I would listen to Paramore based on your recommendations, but I didn't. And you know what? I'm not going to. I'm enjoying this too much. If Paramore releases a new album, I will then go back and review Paramore. But for now, I'm having fun just treating Hayley Williams as an artist with a good fan base and good support who just makes music. And we'll see where that goes. To be honest, speaking of Marcy, that's what I did I didn't listen to the Smiths until after I'd listened to Marcy for like 3 years. I was like, oh, he has another band? So, you know, these things happen. All right. Well then, until next time, for Andy Rourke, there's the camera.